Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jim Feist Pro Football Handicapping Show here at Dom DeMarco's Pizzeria and Wine Bar, where our proprietor Albert Scalliot always says, where the wine flows and the good times roll. We're here once again to talk pro football. And before I introduce our panel, as one of our guests would always say, you are looking live here at the patio. But let me bring in the man's name that's on the show, Jim Feist. Jim, we've been talking, you did it 40 years, 60 years. I'm just going to say this year, you've been doing sports information and sports gaming for many years. How's that?
Since before the NFL started?
No.
No, not that bad, because you went from 40 to 60. You're not going to 80 this week.
No, I just say in many years. You have a lot of years of experience. How's that?
It's a lot of years. It's been about 60. But I've got some people on this panel that have been around as well. I
would say combined we're well over 100 years of experience.
We've got to my left, Brent Musburger. Everybody knows who Brent is. And why don't you say hello, Brent?
Jim, how are you, lad? It's great to be here with all the pros. I mean, you brought a Joe in, you know what I'm saying?
I don't know about that. To my right, we have Jeff Whitelaw, correct?
Good
We've
job.
never met before, so we really don't know each other that much. And Wes, on the end here, I watch Wes every day on VSiN. I want to know how Wes can cover every sport all over the world and still only have 24 hours in the day.
Well, maybe I have to give you and Brent credit, because the first two gambling shows I ever watched on television were obviously Brent with the Greek on the NFL Today, and then you, Jim, on Proline for many years on USA.
And we were on for 36 years, yes. But I did come after Brett. You beat me.
Let's kick off here, guys. Injuries the last couple weeks have been piling up in the NFL. We talked a couple weeks ago, the injury to, losing his name now, from the Lions, was about 1.5 points on the line.
Hutchinson.
But now that the injuries are piling up, how much are they affecting totals and lines?
Personally, I think they're affecting them a lot. We talked a little bit last week. We saw that number 1 and number 2 wide receiver for Tampa were out. You know, logically, you look at that and say, well, they're not going to do very well offensively. But how the hell did they get almost 500 yards on offense with backups? And then I was just talking to Brent, and he said, well, the Atlanta defense isn't very good.
Exactly. Atlanta defense hasn't been very good this year. And also, you know, Baker Mayfield, he's a gamer. He's just a spunky guy. We wouldn't probably make him one of the elite quarterbacks. He's got a tight end by the name of Otten. And if you go look at the numbers from yesterday, he used Kyle a lot and kept moving the ball. He also has a running back who could leak out, White, and he was able to get the ball into his hands. But basically they were working against a little bit of a subpar defense. You look at the defensive stats. I know you guys look at all kinds of numbers. I look at points per game. I don't care that some of it's garbage time. And certainly the Falcons are not one of the elite defenses, and the Buccaneers are one of the worst, by the way, in the league in points per game. And that is why Cousins and the Falcons went to work on it.
They did. Now this week, Atlanta's going to host Dallas. And of course everybody's down on Dallas and Jerry Jones, and he should stop being the GM. And he's not going to stop being the owner, but he should stop running the football team.
Yeah, I don't think any owner, to be perfectly honest, okay, in the National Football League, I don't think any owner today should be the general manager. I think it's a mistake on their part. Now, I happen to like Jerry a lot personally, and he was instrumental in Las Vegas getting a National Football League team. If Jerry Jones had not thrown his weight behind Mark Davis, I'm not sure that the Raiders would have made it through the voting process. But Jerry, being one of the most powerful owners, was able to negotiate that and get him through. But he should just be an owner, sit up there. One of the best owners in sports happens to be here in Las Vegas. His name is Mr. Foley, who owns the Golden Knights and started them. You don't see him mess with talent on the Knights. He hired a great general manager, turned them loose, and that's what a good owner should do. And I think Jerry should step away and hire a good general manager.
I think we'd all agree with that. We saw a good owner up in New England for years, just let the football guys do the job, and they did pretty well as well. I'm going to move over here to the other side. What do you think about what happened this weekend and all the injuries that are happening in the league?
Well, I mean, I usually played a lot of stuff early, you know, Sunday or Monday, but with all the injuries, now I'm waiting. And I mean, you know, like for example, the Green Bay Detroit game. I mean, there's a huge difference between whether Love does or doesn't play. So I mean, you have to wait. You have to sort of wait on that game. You know, the report was he's doubtful. So, you know, but if he were to play, I would be on Green Bay. But without him, you know, I'm not going to play the game. So yeah, you definitely have to wait. And a lot of the things I look for are the injuries to the line, the defense and offensive lines, because the running backs, as you can see, the 49ers running back replaces McCaffrey, and he's almost leading the league in rushing before he got injured, and so you can definitely replace a running back, even an elite running back, but the offensive and defensive lines are very important, and I look for the injuries in those, but again, I'm waiting till I did most of my stuff day of the game this week, when normally I do a lot more taking positions early.
Jeff, hold on. Let me ask you this: how much is Love worth?
I think he's probably worth about 2.5, 3 points.
Wes, you agree?
No, I do agree. It was 4, I believe, last night. Now I'm seeing 3 on the screen, so maybe that's a little bit of positive news, or kind of the odds makers hedging their bets a little bit, or just moving on early action. But I think what Jeff said was so important, especially when you get cluster injuries, because we know what the bettors bet, obviously, when a quarterback is out, or a skill position, especially like a receiver is out, you're going to see a line move. Now, you're not seeing it move necessarily on the screen when an offensive lineman is out, or there's a cluster injury on the O-line or the secondary. But best believe it's getting bad, even if it's not going to move on the screen. I think tonight is a real big example, like the Giants and the Steelers of the Monday night game. And you see that total down to 36.5. That's part and parcel of the fact that the Giants, I think, have scored, 10 points at home in the last 2 weeks, so obviously market low on them. And the Steelers, more of a defensive team, even though Russell Wilson gives them a chance with the deep shot. But the reason why this total is going down is because you have, I believe, 3 guys that were starting the season on the offensive line for the Steelers not going to go tonight. You also have Andrew Thomas at left tackle not going to go tonight. And we saw what happened last week against Philadelphia when Andrew Thomas was not in there. Daniel Jones got sacked 7 times. So the offensive line, that's what I look for, and I especially wait till I get to the Friday injury reports, because if you're on social media, they have the Tuesday injury report, and Wednesday and Thursday. Those don't matter. It's all about the Friday, when you see FP, full participation, or LP, limited participation. That's what you want to pay attention to more, and it's the offensive line, defensive line, like Jeff said, and the secondary. Those cluster injuries are what really matter in terms of these totals and lines.
Brent, let me go here with you, because injuries usually equal to trades. We've already seen something with Hopkins now going to the Chiefs. What other trades? I hear now Kupp may not get traded from the Rams. There was talk about that a week ago. He might go. Now I'm hearing he may not go. Something like Hopkins to the Chiefs. How much does that help?
Well, it was interesting watching the Chiefs live yesterday, and Andy Reid, such a great offensive mind. But almost every play, he substituted 3 or 4 receivers, tight ends and wide receivers. And I was surprised that DeAndre Hopkins was on the field for as many plays as he was yesterday against the Raiders. Now, he didn't catch many passes. He was not involved that much in the passing game. But believe me, next week, when they've got Tampa Bay on Monday night, the Buccaneers staff better get ready for DeAndre Hopkins. If I had to pick out one team and one position where they're going to make a move, I think the Lions can win a Super Bowl. But they need to find one more defensive end because of Hutch's injury.
Where do they find that? I know they've contacted the Raiders. I heard the Raiders have not opened or haven't said yes yet, but...
Well, what would you give for Mad Max?
That's a great question. I mean, you're going to have to get a lot. I mean, my thing is this with the Raiders. We talked about it briefly last week. I think the Raiders are a couple years away from being competitive. So can you win with him while he's here? Or can you trade him and get something while he's hot now and build from what you can get?
That is the reason why you would consider trading him. Let's say to Detroit, okay, Detroit, it's not going to be a high number 1. We want your number 1 for Mad Max. But if you get to the Super Bowl, we want the next year's number 1. In other words, you get a bonus if Mad Max. Now, listen, there's a lot of people who really disagree with me. My son over here to the left thinks I'm nuts. Mad Max, he sells T-shirts for the Raiders. He's a great player. He demonstrated that yesterday, putting pressure on the Chiefs. The Chiefs' left tackle had a terrible time when Mad Max went over to that side. So I can understand not trading. But your question is the one that I go back to. In other words, Devontae Adams, okay, you're not going to get to the playoffs with him, so absolutely move him, okay? There's no question. Now, can you rebuild around Mad Max? One thing the Raiders have to do is address game management and the offensive coordinator. It's ridiculous when you get down in there inside the 10-yard line. You got 4 downs and you can't make come on, my man. You got to. You waste your timeouts before the 5-minute one. Come on, my man. How long you been around football? You got to have timeouts after the 2-minute warning. Anyway, I've rambled on too long.
Jim?
I would trade them, not because I'm an anti-Raider guy, but I'm a pro-Raider guy. I'd like to see them build for the future. They're not going anywhere this year, especially in the division they're in. You know, the best team in that division, of course, is Kansas City with the best coach, head coach, and defensive head coach. So they're not going anywhere. It's time to build for the future, because you're not going to win anything in the next couple of years unless you upgrade and start to get some players in there. Oh, you, Jeff?
Well, they're not going to win anything with the quarterbacks that they have. I mean, you know, they're interchangeable. One's mediocre and the other one's mediocre. So, you know, we were talking about the difference between Love and Willis. I mean, there's not much of a difference with the Raiders quarterbacks. You know, they're both lousy, and you know, outside of the tight end, who's been incredible, they don't really have a lot of threats. You know, getting rid of Jacobs and everything, so they're in a little bit of a rebuild anyway. Yeah, I would say if you can get something from Max, you know, trade them. And Brent, that's a good idea. You know, put an incentive in there. You know, if they don't go to the Super Bowl, I mean, Detroit, that would be amazing, because Detroit would very well be the favorite if Hutch was still healthy.
You know, there's nobody in the NFC right now that looks even close to what Detroit's doing, and they almost got there last year. Wes,
Yeah. Look,
Can't forget the Washington come in.
Oh, well, not if you can throw that kind of pass and get away with it at the end, which was absolutely amazing. I know that changed a lot of pocketbooks out there yesterday.
I was just happy Gardner Minshew, the old, if you're familiar with the blues man Howlin' Wolf, had a song called Backdoor Man, and Gardner Minshew was the backdoor man yesterday for those of us that had 10. But to your point on the Raiders, look, the operation has changed a couple times here since they've been in Las Vegas, so it's like, you got to know what your operation is, I think, before you know what your direction is going to be. Of course, the McDaniels regime let go last year. They hired AP, they rallied, but AP still is trying to figure it out, you know, in terms of the strategy. We saw that against the Rams when he kicked the field goal down. Hey, it's like, why? Why are you doing that? Or why are you punting on the opposing 40 with 7 minutes left to go against the Chargers? Man, you're not getting the ball back, and then they got scored on. So he's trying to figure it out. So you know, you really kind of got to go from the bottom here and try to build your way back up, and we'll see if Tom Telesco and company, if that's a regime that Mark Davis is going to stick with. And yeah, I would be fire sailing here. I think if you're the Raiders, if you're the New Orleans Saints, if you're a team that obviously it is going sideways, Cleveland, even though Cleveland did get a win yesterday, you got to start selling assets.
Well, Cleveland is. But they've been waiting about 60 years to get anywhere. They were very impressive yesterday, but this is the last to first kind of league. It's happened before. I mean, the Texans 2 years ago, before they got Stroud and they got the new head coach, nobody was giving them any credit to go anywhere, but last year they had a hell of a year. And now they're still well thought of, although they have some injuries, both offensive and defensively. But this week, they're going on the road, and I'll tell you, I already took the Texans against the Jets. I don't see the Jets going anywhere. I don't even know if their spirits are high enough to go out there and compete.
Jimmy, beware the Texans on the road. For whatever reason, Stroud has struggled a little bit, okay? So don't make it your 5-star, you know what I'm saying?
Well, it wouldn't be my first loser.
Make it the free play.
Jim, I know everybody knows you're a big fan of Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. You've made that very clear. Maybe he should hook up with
You've been reading the wrong article.
Maybe he needs to hook up with Jerry Jones, and that would be great for you. But we've all talked about quarterbacks so many times. We talked about Daniels last week. We've hit on that. My question to you is, nobody really gave the Vikings so much of a chance, and they still may not even make the playoffs. Who knows? We've got a long ways to go. But is Sam Darnold...
We got 4 of the next 5 games on the road, and only one of them is a division game, and that's the 5th week against Chicago.
Right.
That's a crazy schedule.
Is Darnold a franchise quarterback for the Vikings?
Probably not.
You don't think he is?
Well, it has to prove out. It's too short of a cycle to... He hasn't had that history before. He started the year off good. Let's see what happens.
Okay. Jeff?
I'm not sold on him. I mean, he's having a great year, but he really hasn't done a lot prior to this year. And when you have Jefferson going for you, he makes any quarterback a lot better.
Yeah, I think with Minnesota, look, they were probably priced too low in the start of the season. I think they were like 6.5 on the win total. And now they're 5-2. They're probably still going to eclipse that win total, but they are coming back to earth a little bit because you get a team on a roll early that's unexpectedly getting on a roll early, and then they lose a game, and then all of a sudden, water finds its level. And I think you saw that not only with Detroit, but losing the game to the Rams. Sometimes you lose 2 games in one night after you lose when your O finally goes in the loss column. And that's what happened, I think, with Minnesota. And now next week they have Indianapolis in that rematch of, remember, 33-0. The Colts were up at the Vikings and then lose it. I remember that because I was in Lawrence, Kansas for the Indiana-Kansas basketball game. And we're looking at the score on the way, and we go to the bar, and it's like, we're just up 33-0. How do the Colts lose this game? But they did, and now quarterback controversy, I guess, in Indianapolis with Anthony Richardson, who the big story this morning. He asked out of the game, and he said in the press conference, not that I had an equipment malfunction or hey, I got my bell wrong or turned my ankle or something. He's like, I was tired. That's not the, you make up something. Make up, I had an equipment malfunction or the headpiece where I get the plays called or isn't working. So we had to get that fixed. And now you have people saying, oh, let's go to Joe Flacco. Well, it's like, well, he's a 40-year-old quarterback. What's the ceiling? He's going to get you maybe to 10-7 in the playoffs, and then you still haven't figured out if this kid can play. So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. You got to play this guy and see what you have, I think.
It's a shame the NFL doesn't have a G League, because that's where Richardson belongs.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, he did not start enough games at Florida. He should have. The one thing about college athletes being paid these days that I like is the result. I believe more quarterbacks are going to stay in school. Why take a pay cut to go to the NFL, what some of these guys are making now around Alabama and some of these schools? But Richardson is one of those kids who just does not have enough quarterbacking experience. He's one of the best, probably the best all-around athlete at the quarterback position, and no doubt about that. But managing a game, and that's why it's the toughest position in professional sport, and that's why you have to be careful with the Colts because, and I happen to agree with you, Wes, I think Flacco will go back to being the starting quarterback.
If they want to make the playoffs, he's obviously the best choice. He's definitely higher rated. Richardson's a kind of a run. He is a great athlete. The problem is when he runs, as opposed to avoiding contact, he looks for it. And those guys he's looking to hit or hit him are bigger, tougher, stronger, and it's not going to work. He's constantly going to be hurt. Tired? Yeah. Probably a little bit of tired and hurt.
Yeah,
because of the way he plays.
Exactly, but the only thing is that's his best skill set right now, Jim, is that you got to let this big, strong kid that's quick run the ball a little bit. You got to do some RPO with him because that's the nature of college football right now, and you're seeing it translate into the pro game right now because you don't have a lot of quote-unquote pro-style offenses. It's all spread and, get the guy the ball in space and tempo, run as many plays as fast as you can, and it's all RPO, and these guys don't make that second, third, fourth read. I know Tom Brady pointed that out this summer in an interview. He's like, you don't have programs anymore, you have teams, and now you have these kids transferring every single year. So you don't learn where it's like, hey, I'm the third and fourth guy, and then maybe by my junior year, like Brady did at Michigan, I'm finally starting. So that really stunts these guys' development, and I think that you're seeing it every Sunday in the NFL.
And it's showing up that part of the league, the bottom part of the league, is pretty bad football, and you're seeing some big numbers. And the better teams are getting better because the bottom teams are selling off some of their talent, some of the higher priced talent, some of their better talent, and we're talking about the Raiders maybe selling off Max so they can build. Well, that's going to continue, and what's going to happen by the end? Well, we're at the halfway point. So these better teams are going to get stronger, more talent, and the worst teams are going to get worse, and the spreads are going to go higher. So we're going to have to make choices as players, or whether we want to take 11, 12, 13 and a half on games that we would never think that we would be seeing.
You know, Jim, let's talk about here the Monday night game. Wes touched on it. Do you like anything tonight?
I am on the Giants +6. I am holding my nose as I say that, because this is a team that scored 10 points combined in its last 2 games at home. But it's really it's not even an endorsement of the Giants. It's kind of like being a day trader in the market in the NFL, what you got to do week to week. And it's selling off a little bit of Pittsburgh. You know, the market came against them huge last week. The Jets were almost a 3-point favorite. I think they closed 2.5. And Pittsburgh won the game by double digits, and Russell Wilson was able to connect a little bit down the field. But that was against the Jets secondary, despite the fact they had Gardner. They were really banged up, so Pittsburgh took advantage of it. Both these offensive lines are hurt, and the Giants, quite interestingly enough, are in the better spot. Daniel Jones very good as an underdog against the number, and they've been better on the road. They've been terrible at home in MetLife Stadium in Jersey. But, you know, going away, I just think Pittsburgh, it's not that vintage Mike Tomlin spot where he's a really small favorite or he's an underdog, where they've just been money for about a 20-year sample size. So I think 6 is worth it. I think maybe a couple of the 6.5s disappeared, but reluctantly I am backing the Giants tonight.
Jeff or Jim, either one of you guys on this game tonight?
I'm not on the game. I would have taken 7. Again, I would only be on the Giants, but I like Wes said, I didn't really want to stomach less than a touchdown. But they do play better on the road, and they score a little bit more on the road than at home. So, you know, the Steelers aren't historically good as a favorite, and you know, and the Steelers certainly don't have a great offense, and the Giants, they both have good defenses. Obviously, Pittsburgh's defense is elite, but again, you know, Pittsburgh is not a good favorite. So I would have only been on the Giants, but I was looking to take 7, so I just passed.
I would play Pittsburgh, but I would play a money line play on Pittsburgh only. I would not lay the points. I mean, I would play, if it was a baseball game, I'd play the money line, but again, it gets expensive when you start looking at numbers like this. So you have to say, well, maybe I should watch a movie.
Wait a minute, you guys, let me know what happens. I'm going to be watching Ohtani eat up Yankee Stadium. I mean, come on.
Yes.
What are we talking about?
We hope he's
There's my Yankee fan back there. He's got a Yankee hat. He thinks they're going to get back in the world. You need Judge to come alive, my man. I'm telling you that right now. We're going to smoke you guys if he doesn't.
Maybe the best bet in baseball is a sweep.
It might be. If they lose tonight, you could be looking at a sweep for sure. Judge went to sleep, I think, at the end of the season and hasn't woke up since. I don't know what's happened to his bat. It has just completely disappeared. He looks lost at the plate.
Horrible.
As good as he was during the season, he looks completely lost at the plate right now. Like, he has no idea what's going on up there.
This Dodger pitching staff has done a remarkable job. When you go back to the last 2 games against the Padres, they shut them out. Then they proceeded into the next round. I think they had another shutout or 2. It's been remarkable what they've done with that bullpen. And Buehler came up with a hell of an effort the last time out. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a sweep. It did not look good for me. And Judge is a big, and they've learned how to pitch him.
Yeah.
He's a big, tall, 6'8" guy, and they're dropping the ball underneath his swing level, and he can't stop himself.
Jimmy,
Yes.
you're a lifelong sports guy.
Yes.
There's a lot of money on the table. Don't bet on the sweep.
Well, I might be getting the hell of a price.
It's like they've been waiting 4 decades for this Dodgers-Yankees
And you know what I thought was key for, I mean, we'll get back to the NFL real quick on the World Series is when the Dodgers throw Flaherty in the first game and he shows up, I mean, when he's on, look out, because after that, they can all get behind him. You saw what happened when he wasn't on in the Game 5 when he gave up a bunch of runs and they lost the game, but when he's on, look out.
Right.
I mean, that set the tone, I think, for the Dodgers.
I give Roberts a hell. I mean, he's had a decimated pitching staff. He's done a hell of a job in the playoffs and now the World Series with what he's working with, and it's the Yankee bullpen has crashed on them, and both of them were depending on their bullpens. Dodgers are holding up.
Let's get back into the NFL. What do you like in the upcoming week? You said the Texans. Anything else?
Yes, but I'm going to have to look at my card.
That's what happens when you have many years of experience.
Well, no, now you're talking. You're trying to.
Big announcement with the Jim Feist Pro Football Handicapping Show. We are not going to be on Mondays anymore going forward. The show is moving to Thursdays starting November 7th. So don't show up next Monday. Nobody will be here. We'll be here a week from Thursday. It's going to be on Thursdays now starting November 7th. Every Thursday. You're going to know what about Thanksgiving? We got you covered. We're doing 2 shows the week before Thanksgiving. So you can plan on being here for 2 shows on the 21st. What'd you find?
Well, we might want to say why. The problem we're having doing this on Monday is the injuries. There's so many injuries in the NFL. We really don't know what to do for you, giving you good advice, or for our own bankroll. We're saying, is Love going to play? Is this guy going to play? The offensive lineman going to play? Who's starting? Who's not starting? It's very difficult, and I hate to give out financial advice to anyone or to myself when I don't know what the hell we're talking about. At least I want to know who the lineups are. That's why we're going to Thursday. As far as me is concerned, and this is another one, if the Colts start Flacco, I'll be taking the 6 points against Minnesota. Okay, that's one. And this is another situation. What Jeff just mentioned it. If the Packers have Love, I'll be taking the Packers at home. But now we're not going to be looking at the same lines because once that information comes out, we're gonna know what's going on. What effect does the Bears blowing that game on the last play have going into Arizona, who just shocked Miami? Now, last week, and I even said this to someone, why the hell is everybody all over Miami Dolphins this week? Tua's coming back from a long way off, not a lot of practice, concussion protocol, the whole thing, and everybody is chasing Miami. And the line keeps going up and up and up and up. Arizona, who's not the greatest team in the world, but they went in there and beat them. So this injury stuff is a big part of football, whether it's college or pro, basketball, same thing. It's important. Now, Dallas. They're going to Atlanta. We just talked about Atlanta not having a great defense. Well, Dallas doesn't have a great defense either. And if you want to make yardage against Dallas, run the ball, because they cannot stop the run. Everybody they've played that can run the ball, even whether swing passes or whatever, they can't stop them. I mean,
What's the total in that game?
51.5. That would probably be the direction I would go in that particular game. Now, what else? The Titans. What is going on with the Titans? They've been a mess. They were highly touted. They've been a mess all year long. Now they're laying 3 to the Patriots. Even though the coach said the team is soft, they played hard yesterday. They played hard. They came out with a win. Why aren't they going to continue to play? They're all playing for their jobs. Not everybody gets $50 million a year guaranteed contracts. Some of these guys actually have to work. Otherwise, they're bagging groceries next year. So these are teams that I'm looking at. But again, I'm holding off on a lot of stuff, maybe making small plays until I know who's playing.
We got a question back here. Ray, what's your question?
Ray Lamarca, Cleveland Plain Dealer. How are you, fellas? I got a very important 2 questions and wrapped into one. We saw Denver give up double digits this week and cover easily. Now we see them on the road and they're getting double digits. Have you ever seen like that anything in your history of sports betting or watching sports from a line change that crazy from a team when nothing fundamentally has happened to Denver since I've known in the past 5 hours since the game ended, and next week. And I know, and is this line possibly priced because they think Baltimore's pissed off and they're gonna run it down their throat? I don't know. I think that 9-10 is awfully high to a team that just gave up 10 and covered well. That's my question.
So your question is, you want to know,
have you ever seen a line?
A team getting doubles after they just were giving double digits,
and nothing
has changed?
No injuries, nothing like that. And
This might go back to what we talked about. I spoke earlier about there's a bottom of the league and the top of the league. The Ravens are at the top of the league, 1, 2, 3. I guess it's an argument who can make on that. The Broncos, new players, new coach, new facility, new schemes. It's a big difference.
I think that this is a little bit of a tricky spot, actually, for Baltimore, where maybe they're not quite at their best.
The other thing is with Denver is they have a quality head coach. He's been around. He's a Super Bowl guy, and he knows how to make manipulations and changes. So when you're dealing with a coach like that, there's a lot of coaches in the league that probably shouldn't be coaches. This guy belongs as a coach. He knows what he's doing, and he's working with a young kid that's getting more and more reps every week, getting better every week. I wouldn't be laying the number, but the question is now, where does it go during the week? What happens with this line? Does it go to 10? If it hits 10, it's definite.
Do they keep it in like the teaser protection, right? Where it's at 9 or 9.5? Because if that goes to 8.5, that kind of tells you, hey, we know the world's going to tease Baltimore in one of the legs down through 7 and 3 to 2.5, and we're not all that worried about it. So sometimes you get little indicators looking at the screen and the market there.
Teaser protection, yeah.
I want to ask the group a question about, we have legalized sports gambling now in so many states, and I seem to have noticed that more numbers come out early, and I'm looking at DraftKings and FanDuel because they're number 1 and number 2 across the country with the betting apps and everything. But I'm wondering, even if you go to FanDuel this morning, I can probably scroll through all the upcoming week plus into the next week. The numbers are already out. And I'm just wondering if that, I remember coming to Las Vegas to visit with the Greek and that, and I thought there were always a couple games, that game's off the board. Let's take the Packers. We don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be this week. But I remember walking into the books, Vaccaro and those people around town, and it was off the board until they got word. But now it seems like there's always a number out there on a game. Am I noticing something that's happening?
Well, it is happening, but they're looking to stimulate action, and they have enough of a bankroll to do it. They're not taking big numbers. Nobody's walking in with a $100,000 bet, at least not at this point in the week. I don't know if they do it, and we don't have it here, so I don't know what kind of action they take, honestly.
Well, look, there are very few books anymore that I think are going to give you those max limits because these are all mainly corporately owned. So you're not going to see early action in the week. Now maybe, Derek and Circa will gamble with you a little bit, kind of the old school true spirit. But a lot of these places, they put that out to draw interest. I talk about it every summer. It's like they put out these college football, these games of the year, and now they're putting up like the full week. It used to be you didn't get week 1 college football till like maybe middle of August, where you got like the full board. But they got to generate interest. And, some of these shops put out the look-ahead lines. I know DraftKings, as Brent mentioned, does. The guys over at Superbook at the Westgate, they always put out that Wednesday line, that 10-day line before the following Sunday. And that actually is a really good tool for bettors, too, because, the first thing you want to ask, I think, is, okay, why is this line this? And then you could see what the adjustment is from the following Sunday's results. It's like, oh, well, this team kicked this team's ass, so that's why they moved this line up, or quarterback got hurt. But using that look-ahead tool, I think, is actually very important. But, yeah, look, like you said, Jim, they're not giving these limits early in the week. It's going to be, you get down on Friday, it's going to go up. On Saturday, it's going to go up. And then on game day, it's going to go up just because there's so much volume in the market then.
Brett, to your point, though, I can't remember the last time I've seen a game taken off the books. They just don't take them off the books anymore.
I've always got a number.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm sitting here thinking about it. I can't remember the last time a game's been
And
off.
here's where you have to be careful with that. Injury reports. There's always inside information. I will tell you, 24 hours before the announcement's coming out of Green Bay, there are people who know whether or not Love is going or not. That to me is why you kind of, I want to go back to the question of the Broncos. And I think it's really a good question because I only looked at a few clips last night. And I thought Nick's was much more confident, okay? And I think the era of Tom Brady is gone. I think you must get to the outside. You must do what Mahomes does. And I noticed Nick's was confident. I think if you look around at the best quarterbacks at Mahomes, they can move to the left and throw on the left. They just don't have much time anymore. The defensive players, the athletic ability is off the charts. I was a little surprised at the 10, but of course I watched what the Raiders did. Devontae Adams, maybe the best catch he ever made as a Raider, was in that fourth quarter when he reached out of bounds, kept both feet in bounds, and helped lead him to that great upset. The Ravens blow too many leads. When you look at a 10-point, the one thing I do with any number, and I will stay away, can this team win the game, okay? And I think Denver can win the game, off of what I saw with Knicks. That doesn't mean they will. But if let's say the Carolina Panthers were getting 13 going in there, I wouldn't touch it, okay? I don't think the Panthers can beat anybody the way they're playing. But that's just how I look at some kind of the numbers. I think it's a really good question about the Broncos, because I think it's a high number.
Any other questions from the outside the audience want to ask the panel? Anybody at all? Yes, sir.
I'll take a shot.
Yeah.
Yesterday, Diggs got hurt for Houston. Non-contact injury, making a cut. I've been talking about this for at least 10 to 15 years about the turf in the leagues. A team like Houston that plays in a beautiful climate, and it's open air, why are they not playing on grass? Do you guys have any opinions one way or the other? Is it better for the league, turf or grass?
So what he wants to know is, so we can get this on video, is the question is it better to be playing on grass than turf? Is the turf causing too many injuries?
Money is probably one of the main reasons, and you know, turf is a lot easier to maintain. You have less employees to maintain everything. I mean, that would be my guess.
You know, I'm not totally familiar with what they do in that arena, but they could have some conventions, some rodeos, some all kinds of things. It was an exception here in Las Vegas, and all credit to Mark Davis, all credit, that for the NFL games, they roll the natural grass in, and then they roll it back out. And when UNLV plays, they roll in the artificial surface, and they go on that. And it's interesting to be around to watch them out there. And he copied Arizona, which was the first of the big arenas, to roll the grass in and out. The people who sell artificial turf and front it, they will tell you that it's an exaggeration with the number of injuries, but I'm guessing that in Houston, and that's actually, that building is very close to the Astrodome down there. I'm guessing they have a lot of conventions and a lot of trade shows that come in there, and it might be easier for them to handle down there with the artificial surface. But simply a guess on my part. I didn't see the injury yesterday.
Well, I think you're right, and it's also concerts too. I know at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, I mean, they have two teams playing there, but they have so many concerts throughout the year. They say they can't possibly do it with grass. But I look at some of the contracts that these guys have. A guy like Diggs is probably making $15 million a year. It's my understanding that they think they save about $2 million using turf instead of grass. Now again, I don't know about the other events. So to me, it's just it just doesn't add up, and it doesn't make any sense. It depends how much.
They got to find a way to pay those contracts.
Let me ask the panelists, let's go to throw a game out for next week. Rams are going into Seattle. I see the line was Seattle -1, 48.5 total. Anybody here like that? Jeff, let's start with you. You like this game? What do you think?
I don't, originally that line was up prior to the Rams playing and Seattle playing Buffalo, and they were Seattle was giving 3. And then, of course, the Rams beat Minnesota, and Seattle looked horrible against the Bills. And now they made it down. I've even seen Pick'em on the game. So they made a 3-point adjustment. But again, I don't like anything in the game. I think the number's pretty good. The Rams are playing well, and they're getting a lot of their guys back. They're linemen, obviously both receivers, and I think they said that Kupp is not going to get traded anymore. So, they're looking to, at the division is wide open. If I were to play the game, which I'm not, I would lean towards the Rams.
The last week there was Buffalo went in there, and you would look at that and you'd say, well, this might be a great spot for Seattle. I didn't play the game, but I know people that had both sides of it. I was shocked at how bad Seattle looked in that game. Now I know DK Metcalf makes a difference, but not that much of a difference.
They couldn't run the ball at all yesterday. And then they got behind, and then the game script changes, and then you got to throw, and then Kenneth Walker is pretty much neutered in terms of using him.
So what kind of an adjustment do they make this week? I mean, this is a division game. Seattle, the LA Rams, and the 49ers, who we all watched last night against Dallas, are all vying to win this division, and it's up in the air.
And Arizona.
Well, yeah, the upset yesterday, that puts them back in it too.
Yeah, not only puts them in it, they're in first.
Right. that really puts them in it.
Jim, you mentioned the Bills, and I want to mention a bet that's really a lot of fun. And Derek Stevens, Wes mentioned Derek down Circuit, has always got the Super Bowl exacta up, okay? And this is about the time of year that you want to move in, and you want to take, I'm not going to give you a couple teams because you can pick up everybody in this room can have an idea, but he did mention the Bills. And I did come away from watching the Chiefs yesterday. I have picked them to three-peat, but I've got some reservations about their ability to attack, and especially their left tackle. I think they're going to have to address that position. But regardless, Jimmy mentioned the Bills. The Bills would be a good play right now because the Chiefs are obviously the favorite. I haven't looked at the exact odds. And then before the season started, I went for the Chiefs and the Packers, okay? Got great odds because the Packers were that long. And I always later in the year come back. It's just a fun bet. I mean, you're not going to get rich. You're going to have fun. You get a good price on it. The Lions would be a decent play, although, they probably have gone way down because of the way they're playing. You'd make them the favorite now over in the NFC. But I think, Wes, it's just one of the bets you can have fun with. You can pick a couple of teams, and you always, back to the days of the racetrack, Jimmy, we always box them. You know what I'm saying?
You remember those days?
Oh, yeah, very well. Brent, if you picked them to three-peat in 2022, I'd be really impressed.
Yeah.
Wes, let me go down to you. Is there a game that stands out to you this upcoming week that you like a lot?
Well, I'll go to one team that Brent just brought up, the Kansas City Chiefs. And I know this is hard to do when they're the lone undefeated team, but when they're the lone undefeated team, these guys behind the counters, they know what they're doing for the most part, most of them anyway, and they're going to keep taxing the price on Kansas City. And now you're seeing Kansas City, I think they're 9, maybe a couple rogue 9.5s against Tampa Bay. I know Tampa Bay's beat up and they lost at home. Even though they out-yarded the Falcons, they were down and they had to come back, a couple turnovers, got behind. I think with Kansas City, it is hard to back them, even with the best quarterback of the generation. It is hard to back them as big favorites. We saw it yesterday here. They got away from the Raiders and got up 2 scores because Minshew fumbled that ball and gave him the short field. But if you look at that was a 1-score game pretty much the whole way with the Chiefs and the Raiders. And Mahomes and Reed, those guys, they don't really cover big numbers like you would think. They kind of play with their food a little bit, and they don't run away from teams. And now you get Tampa Bay coming in. And the fact of the matter is, Kansas City, every game that they have had, if you look this year, has been kind of a high leverage game. And what I mean by that is it's either been a division game, it's been a rivalry game, or it's been a prime time game. They started with Baltimore, that playoff rematch that they barely won. Then Cincinnati, they got that Geff PI. Then against Atlanta, they got that late goal line stand on Sunday night, or stopped them at the 13. Then against the Chargers, they won by 7 on the road, divisional game. Chargers had both their tackles out. Then against New Orleans, that was probably the most complete game they played all year. Derek Carr got hurt late in the fourth quarter. Then they had a bye, and then they really got up, because I do a show with former NFL lineman Jeff Schwartz on VSiN, and his brother Mitchell, of course, played for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he goes, these are the games, though, and I wish he would have talked me out of it, because I did lay San Francisco and lost, but these are the games the Chiefs really get up for. They get up for the elite teams, and this is the Super Bowl rematch, and they won by 10. Purdy had a bad game, 3 picks. And then they go to the Raiders, and they only win by 7. Raiders get in the back door. Kansas City has a division game the following week against Denver. I just wonder, when I talk about high leverage, how much energy this team has. Because you never know when you kind of get to a week in the NFL. You don't have it for 18 weeks. You just don't. I don't care how good you are. And you throw in a clunker, kind of like the Ravens did against the Raiders in week 2. And this could be it. And I know Tampa Bay's got some injuries, but that offense can still move the ball. And I think the Chiefs just so banged up. Their top wide receivers, their top running back is just now getting back. It is hard to lay big numbers with this team, even though they're undefeated.
Go ahead, Ray.
All right, quick. I got a question, guys. Ray again, Summerlin Gazette. I've asked this before on the previous podcast panel here, but now we got some new members. It's the same question, and I definitely want your answer, because I don't know if I'm ever going to see you again on the internet.
What's the question?
So the question goes like this. I've been hot for the past 5 years. Week 10, Caesars puts out this prop, and I did it last year, or 2 years ago, I got a little scary. I had to take Cincinnati, and it went like this. Last year, I believe it was Kansas City, Philadelphia, or Buffalo to win the Super Bowl, plus 325. The field was minus 105. That was a good one. The year before, I did a Kansas City, Buffalo, I don't know, hit that one. The year before that one, still plus 325, plus 340. We got tricked. It was Kansas City, Philly, I forget, I had it. Then Cincinnati started getting fancy, right? And that was like 6-1, like right at the playoffs, like threw something on that. I won. Well, here we are again. We're coming up on week 10. And I believe the prop is going to look like this. Kansas City, Detroit, they like AFC. So let's just say it's Kansas City, Detroit, or San Francisco to win the Super Bowl at plus 325.
So basically, you're getting 3 teams at plus 325, or you get in the field.
And we're about to find out about next week. See, about
In week 10.
Or the field minus 105.
Field minus 105.
What 3 teams would you guys like to see at plus 325 if you had the opportunity to see it?
Well, I wouldn't want to leave the Ravens out of it. They have the punch, they have the wherewithal and a head coach to go a long way. So you didn't mention them in that threesome.
We don't know what it's going to be until next week.
Right, so we got to wait for that.
Yeah.
But the Ravens would be one of the teams. I like, obviously, the Lions, the way they're playing, they've been playing, and they played last year. Kansas City has not been impressive, but they do know how to win. They have probably the best defensive coach in the business. Andy Reid is no bum. He's been there a lot. He was there with Kansas City and with Philly. He always gets there. Unless he has bad offensive line play, which he did in one Super Bowl, we had a couple offensive linemen out. But he's going to be there. There would be 3 teams I'd be looking at.
I personally want the Eagles, something tied to them too, because I think that slow start, they're starting to figure it out, and they're starting to get healthy. They were my pick to come out of the NFC, and I have Super Bowl futures on them, so I'm a little biased, but they're starting to figure out that they're a running team. even though they've got some explosive receivers and they get pass plays down the field, at their core, they're a running team and they're running the football. You saw what they did to Cincinnati in the second half. They just absolutely ran away from them. You look at the market this week, they opened 6.5. That's already stormed through the 7 and is now 7.5. So I think the Eagles may be hitting their stride right now.
3 teams, right?
3 teams.
And they have, one of them has to win the Super Bowl, correct?
Plus 325.
I'm going to take the Ravens out. And I'm going to tell you why. Until Lamar Jackson proves to me in the playoffs, down 10 points in the second half, that he can orchestrate the passing game and bring you from behind. Now, listen, MVP, great athlete, love to watch him. He's a wonderful story. But he hasn't proven to me the quarterbacks who win have got to be able to come from behind in the second half, okay? So I would take Kansas City, Detroit, but I'm going for Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen is a winning quarterback. It was interesting what they did to the wide receiver room. They got rid of the diva, okay? Sent him southward. They're working in a youngster from Florida State. He had his best day yesterday. Coming around. They got young Cook, decent running back. And I like the coach too. Now, obviously, I like the Harbaughs completely. But since I can only have 3 until Lamar shows me, then I would change. But I'm going for Buffalo.
Yeah.
And I would go for Detroit and Kansas City for sure. And if I wasn't from Buffalo, I might agree with Brent.
A lot of scar tissue there.
But Buffalo can't beat Kansas City in the playoffs, and my third team would be the 49ers. I think when McCaffrey comes back, they're getting their defense is healthy, and I think even though they're 4-4 right now, the 49ers would be the third team I would take. I think when healthy, they're one of the elite teams in the NFL.
It's an interesting bet for sure.
It is very.
Yeah. Any other questions before we go through final thoughts? And before we do that, don't forget, we're moving to Thursdays, November 7th, starting not next week. We're not coming on Monday. We'll be here on Thursday. And also, you got a ticket. Albert's going to be giving away a couple bottles of wine. And J-Lore, I was just going to say that we give it up for Jacob, the area manager's over here from J-Lore, for helping that and giving away a couple bottles of wine. So, Jacob, thank you.
Thank Albert.
He's thanking Albert, Albert's thanking him. So everybody's getting thanked here, including the panel of Brent Musburger, Jim Feist, Jeff Whitelaw, and Wes Reynolds. Give it up for them, for the panel. My name's Tommy Canale, and the last thing we're going to do is, Jim, I'm going to throw it back to you. Before we kick off, we're going to be gone for 10 days. Trade deadline's going to be gone by the time, it's going to be here and gone by the time we come back to meet. Anything that you're looking for in particular of a trade that may happen?
I do think Detroit's going to look for somebody to replace that lineman they lost. I do believe that a lot of the bottom teams that have high salaries for some good players are going to look to dump them to pick up draft picks, because for a lot of these teams, the league is going through a transition. I believe we had 16 offensive and defensive coaches change. We had some head coaches change this offseason. Some are qualified to be there and some are not. I'm not going to name names or pick on anybody, but there's a lot of transition in the league. That's why we have a top and a bottom. And I do think these bottom teams are going to look to dump salary, get rid of some payroll, and bring in draft picks to try to build for the following couple of years. And we have had a league of going from the bottom to the top. So it can happen if you have the right people in administrative that can pick some draft choices.
With that, he is Jim Feist. This is the Jim Feist Pro Football Handicapping Show. We will see everybody here on the patio at Dom DeMarco's Pizzeria and Wine Bar on Thursday, November 7th. Take care, everybody.